Good evening, everybody. This is Cinnamon Noir.
And this is the Ramen Shaman.
Welcome back to the final episode of Rayman Legends.
Yay!
Yeah. This game has pretty much no story, so there's no real build-up to the final boss, but it's still very dramatic and exciting, so...
Fair enough.
Look forward to it, even though I will warn you there is almost no tension. It's interesting, I like games which have a fair amount of story. I like, dramatic tension and stuff like that. But I can also appreciate games like this where they just do not even try. Frankly, Rayman Origins was exactly the same way. Even though that had kind of a story, the villain at the end came out of nowhere. There was no tension. But yeah, anyway, back to this game. So yeah, here we have a proper chase level. And unlike the last couple, this one actually starts with the chase, instead of introducing the chase sort of 3/4 of the way through. Back to the chase music. This final world has some very exciting music. I think it's probably a little better than the music in some other parts of the game. The beginning and the end of this game both have very exciting pieces of music. It was probably deliberate, and in fact, there are a few similarities between the beginning and the end. One is the dragons, which are in the first level because it's medieval themed, and in this level because, I don't know, they're exciting.
And fire, I guess.
Yeah, everyone loves fire.
Fire does seem to be a theme here.
Fire good.
Fire is our friend.
Well, it's the first major invention we had as humans.
I was referencing... I was kind of referencing Young Frankenstein there, but okay.
Oh, yeah, right. No, but I don't do too well with fire, I'm going to be honest. I do die a few times in this area. This is where it really becomes a serious problem, using all of the buttons you need to use at the same time without getting mixed up. And since I try to get the teensy chests whenever I can, I often end up sort of I don't know how to put it, getting my thumbs mixed up and pressing the wrong button. If I just chose to go through as fast as possible, I wouldn't make as many mistakes. But it's difficult for me to say because I'm not 100%ing this, but I like to get the teensy chests when it seems reasonably possible to get them. Anyway, I was convinced there was a secret up here. This is exactly the kind of place they would have hidden a secret in Rayman Origins, but not today. Greg's already bored.
Sorry.
To be fair, he's had ample provocation. Look at how many times I'm dying here. No, anyway.
You've watched me play Souls games, so fair enough.
That's true. No, but I find these tongues of flame rather interesting. They grow the way that the little vines grow in the second world. And frankly, how they grow in a lot of Rayman games. This is sort of a tradition. But these are on fire, and I'm not even sure if they are plants that are on fire, or if they are just literally fire. I think they're just supposed to be fire. It's kind of weird, though, because, there are sort of cooler sections of it, which look more like lava.
Yeah.
So that would suggest it can't be just fire. Anywho, here we have more salsa. I did not realize salsa was going to come back in this level. Because we already have fire. Having the lava salsa is also kind of overkill, don't you think?
A little bit.
It's literally overkill. Everything's trying to kill me. Anyway. This is an interesting little sub-level. So, these elevators rising up, but we also need to use this rotating platform to guard ourselves from the fireballs. So make sure, don't rotate it too much or he'll fall off. But make sure you rotate it enough that the far end of it can protect him. Also a little wall running here if you want to grab an extra coin. You don't technically need to wall run there, but, it's inviting it. And why wouldn't you, really? It's just bad sportsmanship, not... So we rescued the queen, and now back to our extremely dramatic level. So, one thing you have to remember here, and this probably sounds obvious, but it's something I have forgotten. Don't forget that you have the fist that you can shoot. So make sure you get rid of that guy before you start moving the shield. You don't need to hit him in the middle of moving through it. As you've probably noticed, Murphy moves those shields incredibly fast. Pressing another button while you're moving on them is not easy to do. Another important thing, don't get tricked by the presence of enemies underneath you into ground pounding. I have made that mistake more than once. Just fall on top of them. They have horns. That makes it seem like it might not be a great idea, but they can't hurt you. Anyway, more lava salsa. One tricky thing about the lava salsa compared to the fire is how it's it's viscous, so the way it falls isn't wholly predictable. You can, block a lot of it and then end up getting hit by it anyway when you didn't anticipate where it would run. So here's the second bonus level. Extremely close to the first bonus level, which is a little strange to me. I think they wanted to get them both out of the way relatively quickly here because the second half of this level is an extended set piece that would be very hard to interrupt with a level, like a little sub-level.
Yeah.
When you're moving extremely fast, they don't want to, give you a distraction. That's one reason why all of the, rescue levels, which only have 3 teensies, never have any bonus worlds. Because you're supposed to be moving fast in them. I mean, I know this seems incredibly obvious. Of course they wouldn't. They're tiny levels themselves. But
True.
I don't know. I just think about these things. Why would they design the game? Why would they design this game the way they did? Oh, and that guy didn't kick me that time. He just opened his jaws wide and chomped me in half. I didn't realize until I started rewatching started rewatching the videos that a lot of the enemies have multiple attack animations, which is surprisingly elaborate for a game where you're never going to see an enemy for more than a couple of seconds. It's not the kind of thing you expect from platformers. I've kind of mentioned this before, but platformers really de-emphasize combat. You're not supposed to pay attention to enemies in this game. They're just another kind of trap.
That does make sense.
But still, this is sort of a Michelangelo trademark, I think. Paying attention to small details that you wouldn't necessarily expect him to.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, if someone is playing through this more than once, or is paying attention...
Yeah, sure. It is not a wasted amount of effort, certainly, like some things are. No, one thing I will definitely say about almost all the Rayman games is that their replay value is it's excellent. Yeah, that was really stupid. You're supposed to use Murphy to lower that thing and sort of put a cap on the salsa. Although, interestingly enough, there is some physics with that. Pressure will build up when you cap it, so it will push you back up after a little while, and you need to bear that in mind. There, I got hit by the salsa, and the salsa kind of spikes me into the lava.
That is weird.
An excellent move. I would applaud it if, I didn't have to die for it.
Yeah.
I mean, what I'm saying is if we were playing sports, that would have been an amazing move. Quite an intelligent adversary, this salsa. Now, but you see there, I think I mentioned this in World 3. Sometimes little bits of the salsa will hit you, and they don't hurt you at all. You have to be hit by, a stream of the salsa. Anyway, so I finally managed to get that. Here's a situation exactly like the last one, except that it's got a teensy instead of the coin. Classic level design. You introduce an easy version of the mechanic with a simple reward, and then you ramp it up in both senses.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Rayman has never been an incredibly adventurous games series, but one thing about it is that it's always got the fundamentals down excellently. You could use Rayman very easily as just a course in, simple game design.
Which does make sense. And I think it is better to do that, too.
Sure. It's better than being experimental and bad.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah, and there's unfortunately lots of games like that, so... In the modern world, I would definitely say a game being humble and competent is actually a rarity. So, I applaud Michelangelo for that.
Although, there are games like, what's it called? Killer 7, which are... where the mechanics are sometimes clumsy, but the creativity on display...
Right.
And the unique...
It makes up for it.
Ways that it's presented to make up for it.
Yeah, sure. If there was one game where I would say it's kind of incompetent, but that doesn't matter, that would probably be Killer 7.
Oh, yeah.
Meanwhile, No More Heroes. Actually quite a bit more polished than Killer 7, and yet less interesting, curiously.
Yeah, there's some truth to that. In general, Goichi Suda has kind of gone downhill.
It's a shame, yeah. And there's nothing controversial about saying that either.
No.
It's generally accepted fact. Oh.
Actually,
So yeah, the second rescue level in this game, very similar, sorry, in this world, very similar to the first, but considerably harder.
yeah. That is pretty tough.
Yeah, you may have noticed, like, there's literally just a split second between when you have to jump out into the middle of nowhere and when the platform that you are going to be on appears.
Uh-huh. That's actually... When I was talking earlier about not being able to tell the vines apart, this would actually be a much better example of that.
Oh, definitely. In fact, the way you tell these vines apart is not at all about how they look. Sorry, not at all by how they look, but by where they are.
Mm-hmm.
So you just have to know, the one on the bottom would be the one you're standing on. And when you're running along something and two grow out in front of you, those must be the bad ones, right? That was irritating. I was literally right at the end of the level. I could literally see the end. You know, you can see the Teensie there. And yet that is such a tough jump. It is the narrowest, possibly the narrowest jump in the entire game.
True.
And I say that because even though there are some tougher platforming challenges in Living Dead Party, the challenge comes from something that is not split-second timing, but rather from messing with your head. So, I'll probably just explain this while we have some downtime, me redoing this level. Living Dead Party is not a proper world. Instead, it's remixes of all of the music levels. The rhythm ones, where you have to run along, you know what I'm talking about. And what makes it special is that every one of the levels has some weird quirk added to it. For instance, the first one, the one that was from World 1, you have this weird fuzzy overlay and a fisheye lens effect that causes it to be almost impossible to see where you're going, which means you have to go based on the music's rhythm and not based on the visuals. Now, I've dealt with that kind of thing before. I don't know if you've ever heard of a game called Rhythm Heaven or Rhythm Heaven Fever. So in those games, you will also have, you know, the rhythm games, and then for harder challenges, you will have your eyesight, like, messed with, so that instead of seeing what you have to do, you have to hear it. You know, you have to have a really good sense of rhythm. But in those games, it's very tightly designed, so that, like, really, when you do hit it at the correct beat, you will get it every time.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Rayman Legends, I have to say, is not quite that good. It's not quite that tightly designed, and so the result is, you often feel like you are pressing it on the right beat, and the game's just not doing it. So, I eventually decided to give this up. This is humiliating. It's the only level in the game that I decided to give up.
Oh.
But, what the heck? It's optional. It's not essential. I did go back and beat it later. But yeah, let's just move on.
Well.
As the amazing Jonathan would say, I don't flaunt your failures in your face. I was mistaken earlier, by the way. The earlier level is not the one where I failed a bunch of times. It was this one, and I forgot to edit it out.
Oops.
Anywho. So moving on, we have to deal with more of these dark creatures. And you may have noticed that lava does absolutely nothing to them. Not a good sign.
Yeah.
We can, however, trap them in there temporarily. They are stupid enough to be manipulated, so that's something in our favor. They're basically just a mindless horde. They will go in whatever direction you go. That means you can lead them into pits, and you can do other things with them. Yeah, don't stand on these platforms, because they will sink and lead you right into the maw of these creatures.
Oh dearie.
Here is a rather difficult to get to secret level. What I mean by that is it's easy to fall off the path that leads you to it. And kind of a curious sub-level, you start off upside down.
Yeah.
Got a big jump to make over that wheel. And also you've got some gravity shifting going on here.
And also, you know, giant buzzsaws.
Oh, yeah. That's not the hard part of it, though.
No.
Oh, and so then upside down, you need to go over to this part and cause them all to fall into the lava. Making sure, of course, not to get too close to the edge because they're not actually dead, just stuck in there. And then you head back over to where they were.
This is reminding me of the trait from Rogue Legacy, Vertigo.
Oh. That actually causes the whole thing to be upside down?
Yep, the entire display is inverted.
Oh, that's awful. Because, see, doing that temporarily is kind of fun. Having to play a whole game like that would drive me crazy.
Well, you know how the traits worked in Rogue Legacy, right?
Kind of. I've never played it myself.
Oh, every generation you'd get new characters with different traits.
Oh, yes, I know. But what it would mean is I would just write off that particular one.
That is exactly...
I wouldn't expect to get anywhere.
That is exactly what I would do.
Yeah. Anywho, you can hop down a bit early there in order to get rid of the guys with the purple thing, but then you don't get the coin. So there's sort of a trade-off there. Oh, and here's just a gauntlet of jumping challenges. That actually looks tougher than it is. Like, those jumping challenges are not nearly as hard as the bonus level that I just failed to get through.
Huh.
As before, this game kind of guides you into making the right jumps at the right time.
Ooh.
Oh, you know, for a minute I thought that the purple things just distracted the dark creatures, but it doesn't. It actually kills them. So that's why you have time to go get that chest, the teensy chest. Otherwise, you'd probably be wiser just to move on. By the way, if you notice, there's a purple creature, like, mopping the floor in the foreground.
Huh.
And I was stupid enough to think the level was done at this point. Which, I don't know why, because when the level is done, you end up with the little, you know, freeze with all of the spaces for the teensies on it. So having not gotten there yet, you would think I would have remembered that, you know, the level's not over.
Oh, God. Yeah, this is...
But I...
This is, like,
I need a sterner lesson.
Frightening.
A little bit. One thing about it is this floor is a little slippery. I think they've been polishing it or something. So your momentum's a little awkward. Yeah, and there's the end, right there. So, just gotta make that jump.
Kind of like every surface in the American McGee's Alice.
Yeah. Although, to be fair, this isn't nearly as hard as American McGee's Alice. I don't think I could get halfway through American McGee's Alice. Well, let's be frank, I couldn't get halfway through Quake. All of those kinds of games back then were just really tough.
Which is weird because I guess if I played this, I could probably get most of the way through it. But
Oh, I think so. Don't assume it's really hard. This is one of the easier platformers I've played. It's easier than Rayman Origins.
I got to I think I got as far as the Jabberwock.
Yeah, right. Huh. That is where a lot of American McGee's Alice playthroughs end.
Mm-hmm.
Although the Queen is much harder from what I'm given to understand. I don't think I've ever actually even watched someone playing her, but... Anyway, for our next level, we have the appropriately named Hell Breaks Loose. Because we're just going down farther and farther, I don't know if you've noticed. So this is the level where, as I suggested earlier, we are starting to get into the real wall-running gauntlets. This level's mostly vertical. And of course, the level would not be complete without Murphy having to press an additional button while you're running across the walls. And making sure to never slow down, and also never press the wrong button. There's a little bonus thing up here. Not hard to spot, but you might be in a hurry, and then you would forget about it. So don't do that. And here's another one of these weird puzzle box rooms. Only this one is a little harder because you may have noticed that weird bangle-shaped thing in the top. Or what's currently the top. It's actually the bottom when it's originally up. Oh. I forget about the impact of slopes right there. But yeah, that thing is burning hot, so you can't touch any of its sides. Which means by the time you get to it, you need to manipulate it very carefully. As per usual, the sensible thing to do is to find your way to the ring without shifting anything. Then hold on to it while you move stuff around, because as long as you hold the ring, you don't move at all. You also should remember here that you can wall run, so you don't need to move in order to get up that vertical wall.
That's weird.
It's interesting. The game never made you do that before. But they do give you a little warning by the fact that there's a big bronze plaque there. You know, it's sort of an indication that this is special.
I do love the physics in this thing, though.
It's really weird.
It is.
So yeah, for a minute I thought, how on earth do I get through this? Because it's like, this thing covers so much area. But what you need to do is you actually need to let it roll over you. There is no space where you can just jump through it. Instead, You need to get beneath it, and then make it rotate all the way around. And I play a bit fast and loose there. Almost like shoved myself back into it, but we get through.
Jeez.
So now things are really going to start to heat up. I mentioned earlier there's going to be a lot of these H-shaped things. And these literally are just gigantic H's with spikes in the middle. And we're going to be running all over them. And fleeing from dragons, because of course. This level wasn't stressful enough already. So this one is easy, just jump across it. It falls all the way into the pit. But not for long. And remember, you have to move very fast here because these dragons are nipping at your heels. And I think if you slow down even a little bit, they will get you.
Eddie.
Yeah, this is a checkpoint, thankfully, because this is when it starts getting tough. Now we need to start cutting these H's down so we can run along them. If I don't get eaten first.
Having them fly out in front of the screen seems a little distracting.
Yeah, and now this run's already doomed because I'm not wall running, I'm just sort of surfing. Really, I don't know what made me think I had a chance at this point. Because the fact is that if you are, instead of running along the walls, if you're sort of gliding down, it'll mean you're not falling very fast. And that means the dragons will catch up to you and bite you.
Yeah.
So you really don't have the option of just gliding down, even if you wanted to. You do need to run. This is just a tough decision to make here when you cut the cord that drops that H.
Yeah.
Because you need to be able to get onto it so you can wall run on it, but you also need to cut it almost immediately after you start running because otherwise you'll run into the spikes that are on the bottom. Basically, you can't spend more than about a second on the thing itself.
No.
And the thing is that you're also trying to get that teensy at the same time, which means you need to do a running, like, slap. But that increases your speed, which makes it more likely that you'll run into the spikes at the bottom. One thing to remember is just that you do have plenty of time to catch these cages, so don't try to, get ahead of the game and, like, hit them really quickly, because that'll lead you right into a trap. You do need to basically get them when you have the time to get them and not before. I love that little set piece. 2 H's at once. You have to jump from a moving, falling platform onto another falling platform. And now it's going to happen again. In fact, now we have to move between these 2 falling platforms. Probably the craziest thing that happens in this whole world. And the chase is not over. We're done with the H's, but we are not done with the dragons, and now they're moving really fast. Don't worry about anyone but the one in the, any of them except the one in the foreground. He's the only one who can get you.
That is annoying.
It's alright. It's certainly energetic, you can't say this level didn't ramp things up. Here's a little pit we can use to get a coin.
That was kind of brutal.
Oof. And we lift up the saw. And the end is right over there. You can actually hear the ukulele playing. But first we're going to drop down to get a little sub-level. So yeah, the king's actually at the very end of this level. Not a common thing. So this is a curious one. You need to wall run a little bit in order to get on top of these things. I mean, sorry, you could. You could also just lower them. And then we need to move them in such a way that they'll bump us all the way up to the top. Without getting bumped out of them, of course, which is always a possibility. And there we go. There we almost go. Okay.
There we almost
Yeah. I felt pretty good at the end of that sub-level because, a lot of the tension sort of evaporates once you're done with that long chase sequence. Bit of an emotional catharsis. But here we are at the end. And for the first time in quite a while, I think, we actually get a complete level with the king and queen and everybody. And enough lums. I think we completed the lum thing in the last level too, but we didn't get the king. Anyway, back to the overworld. And ordinarily this is where the boss would come in. But I think we actually have another level to go before then. In addition to some more bonuses. Oh no, sorry, my mistake. This is the boss. So this is the final boss of the game, you know? What everything has been building up to, except that it actually hasn't.
Except that it...
A cloud of darkness.
That is...
We have these weird skull platforms. You may remember them from World 3. There was also something a lot like them in the Land of the Livid Dead from Rayman Origins.
Uh-huh.
And here we are just in the middle of the underworld. And a whole cloud of those dark creatures shows up. And gets set on fire. But that's just for starters. No, the real boss of this level is this thing. He kind of looks like the Smorg from Paper Mario 2. Anyway, we get launched into the air. So the first part of this is just a basic chase. You got to escape from this floating hand. Make sure you ground pound on lots of these things because you're going to need the extra momentum. You also need to pound there in order to make sure you actually hit the last one.
Yeah.
And some narrow jumps, gotta be careful of. As per usual, you have to wait for this Teensie to get all the way to the end before you have any chance of getting him. Don't mind my screwing up here. I eventually get the hang of this. I don't think I ever get the hang of that. I think I miss it every time. I love these little fish statues that are spitting out the lava. They're kind of curious. And then there's also these cornucopias, which are weird. You know, the cornucopia does come from Greek mythology originally, I think. Although the word itself is Latin. But these ones are just spewing flames out, so you know. That's not technically what a cornucopia is supposed to be. But I'll let it slide. You may have also noticed there's a Parthenon in the background. I don't know if that thing showed up before. It may have been in the first level. There we go. Finally. So, here we are in the first actual fighting level. So use a wall run to, you know, get up into the air, and then you shoot your fist at the guy. You can't actually deal, like, health damage to him. Instead, what you're trying to do is knock off all the little shadow bits.
That actually looks kind of like something that could be made out of, like, it could be like a swarm monster in a level.
No, that's what I'm talking about. Like, have you ever played the 1,000-Year Door, the second Paper Mario game?
No.
So, curiously enough, the Smorgs in that game, they're also a bunch of little dark creatures that turn into, like, a bigger organism. But the other thing that it reminds me of is that they start out black and turn red when you hit them. So,
interesting.
It's actually incredibly similar. The one big difference with this guy is that you may have noticed he has a shape even when you've knocked the creatures off of him.
Yeah, there's like
so it's like there's some... Sorry.
I was going to say some kind of template.
Or like a ghost is what I was thinking. Like there's a ghost that summoned these creatures to do its bidding. One thing to remember is that the shape, though, cannot hurt you. Only when it has the, you know, little things around it can hurt you. Otherwise, it's incorporeal. And I make a big mistake here. You need to ground pound that thing, and now my momentum is all off. So I'm not able to. Oh boy. Ignominious. So yeah, there are 3 stages to this boss. In between every one, you have to do this little platforming section. And it's all timing. Like, you can't actually jump your way out of these things, like as a fix. You have to just ground pound at exactly the right time. And then you'll get through. I'll also remember there to start running your hair helicopter at the right time, or it'll fling you right into the lava. And we are heading up from Hades into the sky, basically, right now, which is interesting. Going up a long way. We're going to end up in the clouds. So now we have the second stage of this boss. Instead of a hand, he has now turned into these 2 little kind of bat things. They'll rotate around these saw blades in a pretty predictable pattern. It's not terribly difficult to avoid them at this point. However, they can sort of catch up with you faster than you might think. Don't underestimate them. What it is that your left to right movement is not that fast because you're in the middle of these air drafts. So you need to build up some momentum in order to be moving quickly. And so if you haven't moved for a while, these guys can sort of, they can sneak up on you is what I'm getting at. On the other hand, if you're aimed correctly, these guys, you can absolutely reduce them to pieces without much time. So it's mostly about positioning. That guy hit me twice. Fortunately, it was hit fast enough that it didn't kill me, but then I get hit by the other one anyway, so whatever. Yeah, I eventually start learning that the key to this, really, is just to start taking them apart really quickly.
Yeah.
The faster you can do it, the less likely they are to be able to sneak up on you. Because their pattern, even though it is somewhat predictable, is not the same every single go-around.
No, it is not.
They do switch things up a little bit. I got lucky there. I think I destroyed the bit on the end, and that finally got rid of the rest of it.
Uh-huh.
But if that one shot hadn't landed, I'm pretty sure the guy would have smacked right into me.
Ooh, yeah. It's interesting.
I don't...
Sorry.
You go ahead. No, you go ahead.
It is interesting. You mentioned the shadow before, and I like that the other shadow continues flying around.
Uh-huh. Yeah, they're like ghosts. Anyway, now we are so high up that instead of the skull platforms, we have inflated pigs. A little weird. There's Michelangelo's personality shining through here. Anyway, once again, you gotta ground pound this pig at the right time, something I keep forgetting. I love the expression these pigs have. It's very blasé, but at the same time they look kinda happy. It's like their whole lives they just spend here waiting for someone to jump on top of them. I'm assuming they're alive, which, you know, that might not be true. They might just be very whimsical-looking platforms.
Ooh.
That was embarrassing. Right at the end of this little section, I jump right into a saw blade. Anyway, this time I think I should get it. It does start speeding up massively here. There's actually a level in Super Meat Boy, which has a very similar setup.
God.
Basically, a bunch of fans just propel you faster and faster up into the air, and you need to dodge saw blades. Actually, in terms of the explicit things that hurt you in this game, there are some very strong similarities to Super Meat Boy. So, now the final section of this battle, this guy's revealed his true form, which is just this gigantic bat creature. And he'll just hover around this platform, taking up most of it at any given time. You do need to be careful.
He looks kind of
Because
like
he is...
Moon Knight. Or Meta Knight, rather.
Meta Knight? Yeah, he looks a little like Meta Knight.
Moon Knight.
Who's Moon Knight? Anyway. So yeah, you've always got to be on the margins of this platform. He is in fact bigger than the platform, so it's fortunate that he stays on the outside.
Yeah.
It is a little weird. I think I've seen a lot of bosses like this, where it's like, why is he doing what he's doing when he could easily kill you just by going straight for you? It's platformer conventions, you know.
And it's also, these guys kind of act like they're doing their own thing.
They do. They're not quite hostile enough to count as a proper final boss. I will say, while I like this game a lot, this final boss was a little bit of a disappointment for me.
Mm-hmm.
For one thing, it is very random and comes out of nowhere. Like, fighting one of the magicians would have made more sense.
Yeah.
Like in some kind of giant contraption. That was how you ended Rayman Origins, was by fighting
True.
that. But, no, this is just fighting a giant shadow. And now it is over. Much faster than the end of Carol Blaster, which had a very similar boss at the end, but much harder.
It didn't seem that hard.
Oh, it wasn't hard at all. My death was just from being careless. Anyway, now we are in heaven, or Mount Olympus, or Elysium, or whatever it is. Well, it can't be Elysium, because Elysium's underground. So I guess we must be on Mount Olympus, and as a reward for our heroism, we are just absolutely showered in lungs. There's so many here, I think you can get 999, and at that point you actually can't get any more.
Huh.
That's if you pick up all of them. But yeah, so this guy, you know, he sicked a giant ghost on us. He's the last of his kind, but that doesn't mean we should show him any mercy. Let's let this guy meet his friends on the alien planet of butt pitchforking. I want to get a good wind-up for this one. You know, a punch from across the room.
Oh god.
Here we go. And off he goes again. Past the Glowbox constellation, past the Clothesline constellation. And in the pig. So now this symphony is finally complete. And I gotta say, that's the real ending, I think. This whole time, we weren't just trying to save these worlds. What we were trying to do was to start the party on this alien planet.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, this is the end of Rayman Legends. From here, the credits start right away. These credits are almost exactly the same as the Rayman Origins credits. In that game also, at the end, you went into the clouds, the credits come up through the sky, and you're able to destroy them by going into the background.
That's a clever convention.
It's pretty cool, I like it. I mean, it is a little bit uncreative since they did this in the last game, but still a good idea. So, these credits. This is where one of the major edits comes in. These credits, when unedited and allowed to go through all the way, are something like 15 or 16 minutes long. And no, I am not joking. These credits are incredibly long. I'm pretty sure this game at one point credits everyone who has ever lived in France. So, we are not going to be seeing all of them, obviously. Just long enough to get through a couple nice songs. And to see some of the names that I create, you know, through my art of destroying people's letters. Like Gil. And Olivia Ray. Great guy. Excellent game designer. I Sabovost. I knew her. And Larry. Spelled L-E-R-R-I. Now, you can have some fun with this, you know. You can spell out bad words, which I don't do, but it's a thought, you know.
But you could.
Level Dane, you know, people who deign to make levels. No. So, here, since we're here at the credits, and before we start the final level, what do you think of this game, Greg? What are your final thoughts?
It seems like a pretty great platformer.
Yeah, it's not at all badly made. I think, it's not quite as good as Rayman Origins. Rayman Origins, for one thing, created a lot of the conventions that this game relies on, so this game is almost sort of like the expansion pack to Origins, rather than a full sequel. But Origins also had more of a story. It had a new approach for art. You know, it was pretty special. But Rayman Legends is just fun. It's goofy fun, and in that sense, it occasionally manages to eclipse Origins' glory. And yeah, we gotta go all the way up to 999.
Oh,
we are off the charts. The Tower of Lums is not big enough to contain all of them. So we will celebrate our victory by going to the final proper level. A rhythm level, like all the other ones.
Fair enough.
And this one is Dragon Slayer. Sad to say, unfortunately, the song is not one by Slayer. It's kind of what I was hoping for. So, one thing that happens when you win the game is that Dark Rayman invades some of the paintings. So that's another thing you can do as sort of a bonus. We will not be doing that because this is just a plain, like, get to the end of the game proper Let's Play. But it's something to do, you know, if you decide to play this game. So, Dragon Slayer. This is a weird song, this one. It is actually a song by a French metal band, or hard rock band, from the 1970s. I forget exactly what it's called. I'm going to go ahead and look that up, actually. But it's really weird. The song was later covered by an American rock band. The song is called Antisocial, and it's by a band called Trust. Which is a very weird name for a band, but when you remember they're French, you know, it kind of explains it.
Yeah.
Anywho, so, Dragon Slayer, the final rhythm level. Fairly simple. You do have to remember that in some of these cases you need to wait rather than jumping immediately. I love this part of the song because it reminds me of the opening to MXC, the weird game show that was a parody of Takeshi's Castle that was on Spike a long time ago.
I think you showed me some of that.
Yeah. Weird show, but I love it. Anyway, now this is a proper metal song. Yeah, we've finally gotten into some guitar shredding here.
Ooh, yeah.
And now moving on. That was a very short sub-level. I feel bad for anyone who died at that point. And now I feel bad for me.
Jeez.
No. This only really gets hard near the end, so we're going to see a few more deaths there, but, you know, this is just tap the button at the right point, you know.
God.
That, I forgot, you need to jump off of those dragons, because they move so fast that you can't treat them as platforms. It's more like you're just jumping off of them.
Uh-huh.
It's funny, I just thought of the fact that, you know, you tap buttons in these things, but tapping is also something that guitarists do, isn't it? You know, like Eddie Van Halen.
Yeah.
He tapped. I think this song features tapping, not sure. Anyway, you gotta jump real quick. There we go.
Yeah.
Managed to get onto this larger dragon. And finally, to the last area of this. This is where it gets a little complicated. So you gotta make sure you're punching at the right time, jumping at the right time. And of course, if you ever slow down, these dragons will bite you.
Yeah.
And now on a slippery floor, like the one from the last place we saw. I don't know what I was thinking here. Like, you can see that fire-breathing dragon coming a mile away, but I somehow did not.
Oh, well.
And I do something really awkward there, and just drift really slowly over there. They've borne that in mind. You cannot do that. If you do, a tongue of flame will come up and keep you from getting there.
Oh, God.
So yeah, they do enforce the rhythm of this. You cannot just lazily drift over where you're supposed to go. There, I also screw up. You know, you can't just cling onto a platform there and get back on.
Uh-huh.
In these rhythm levels, if your rhythm is not right, you'll just die. There's a little bit of a margin for error. You've probably noticed this in the earlier levels, that you can land on sort of the wrong part of the platform and still get through. But you do need to land somewhere on it. Anyway, this is the last part, so really... Oh, this is just awful. I was going to say there's no excuse for doing this wrong, but, you know, that means I have no excuse for myself.
Uh-huh.
Which I don't. I'm sorry, everyone. This Let's Play is ruined. Anyway. I did eventually get very good at this section. This is something you can sort of master. One thing you have to remember in this section is you should jump as soon as you see the dragon. Do not wait until you think you can get past the fire, because that fire comes up on you faster than you might think. And of course, it ends with Rayman doing air guitar, because Rayman is extremely cool. He can't actually play guitar, but he's cool enough to fake it. I do think it would have been cool if they actually gave Rayman a guitar at that point, you know. This is a cartoon, it's not like they couldn't do that. But instead it's just air guitar, and you know, that's sort of characteristic of Rayman. He's silly, he's goofy. So, that was Rayman Legends. Hope you enjoyed it, everybody. I loved playing this game. This was definitely a rare treat for me. And we'll see you next game.
See ya.
Bye, everybody.